Good afternoon, everybody. Really nice to see you all here. My name, for those of you that don't know me, is Vicky Nash, and I'm Director, Associate Professor and Senior Policy Fellow here at the OII. To everyone online and all of you here in the room, welcome to our event today entitled Beyond the Algorithmic Code, the Environmental Footprint of AI Supply Chains. I'm so delighted to have Dr. Ana Valdivia with us to present this afternoon. Examining the interactions, the controversies surrounding data centers, and in particular, the controversies that may arise in terms of how they interact with the communities, governments, and private actors around them. Anna, if you don't know her, she's a fantastic departmental research lecturer here at the OII. She works in the area of artificial intelligence, government, and policy, and she spends her time investigating broadly how datafication, algorithmic systems, and so on are transforming our political, social, and ecological worlds. She has a background in mathematics and computer science, and her research focuses on the impact of AI on local communities and borders and territories. Despite the fact she's got a background in mathematics and computer science, I should say one of the great things about her, she's also doing lots of qualitative research and ethnographic research, so exemplarizing OI's multidisciplinary approaches. You're currently a visiting research fellow, I think, aren't you, at UCL Centre for Advanced Studies, where you're investigating AI supply chains. And in 2023, Anna's research on AI supply chains was awarded by the British Academy, given an award by the British Academy. In 2022, you also received the Postdoctoral Enrichment Award by the Alan Turing Institute. So lots of success in recent years. Brief housekeeping before we start. For your awareness, this event is being recorded and it'll be posted on our website later on. Expecting you to talk probably for about 30 to 40 minutes, and there'll be a chance to ask questions at the end. For those of you who are joining us online, it'd be really helpful if you could put your questions in the chat so that we can get to them at the end of the session. Those of you in the room, if you can just obviously, even if you've got a really burning question as far as possible, hold on to it and save it till the end, and we'll answer them then. Finally, those of you who are online, if you do want to ask the question yourself when we get to you and use your mic, please just raise your hand during the Q&A and we will call on you that way, I think. But be aware, obviously, that you will be included in the recording. It's great to have you here, Anna, and so now I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vicky, for this very nice presentation. And it's so nice to see like so many students here, also like colleagues. So yeah, thank you for making the time to this evening to come here and listen at my research. So the content of the research is that Vicky said I got a British Academy grant, and then I've been investigating the environmental impact of AI over 18 months. And then the grant is finalizing in December. So I thought that was a great opportunity to present my research to the OII over these months. So according to Copernicus Climate Change Service, which is the European Union's Earth Observation Program, this year will be the hottest on record and the first to be above 1.50 degrees warmer than pre-industrial times. It's not only about the temperature in the earth, it's also about the temperatures in the sea. So obviously in the map here, the surface temperature of our seas are also increasing. And then at the same time, the natural language processing Moore's law says that the number of parameters are multiplying by 10 every year. So we see here, when I started, for instance, my PhD in NLP, 2016, 2017, we got like very few numbers of hyperparameters in order to tune our algorithms, and this number of hyperparameters are also increasing in the last years. So we see here sort of a correlation, right? The temperature, the Earth temperature is increasing, and also the hyperparameters to train algorithms are increasing. But what is the relationship between these two increasements? So given that nowadays we need more hyperparameters in order to train our algorithms, so the NLP models, the size of these NLP models are increasing, that means that nowadays we cannot train NLP models or algorithms in our own laptops. I remember when I was a PhD student, I could train my algorithms in my own laptop. Now there is not that possibility. You need to train the algorithms in the so-called the cloud, in a data center. That means that data centers are these infrastructures that you see at the background of that slide. These data centers are infrastructures that are functioning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So all the year, all the hours, all the week. That means that they are powered to electricity, and they also need water in order to cool down their servers. So given that nowadays these algorithms need more electricity, the big tech companies' footprint, environmental footprint, is increasing, and this is contributing to climate change. That means that their climate targets, for instance, Google and Microsoft have some climate targets, like for instance, to be carbon neutral in 2030. So it's putting this growth in AI systems is putting these targets at risk. Then the strategy that they are developing is to get rid of this, dependency on electricity on energy grids, because part of these energy grids depend on fossil fuels, and this is how they are contributing to carbon emissions. So then the strategy that they are developing is to get rid of this dependency on fossil fuels and then invest in nuclear reactors. So because then, they can say that they are not contributing to carbon emissions because the nuclear energy is sort of like green in terms of carbon. But as I say, it's not only about energy and electricity, it's also about water. And there is this research that show that we need a bottle of water in order for like ChatGPT to write an email. So we see here a lot of natural resources extractivism. And then in order to give an example, I suppose that most of you are familiar with Llama 3, is an open source LLM. And it used 22 million liters of water in 97 days. And then if we compare that with the consumption that one person in London could use, we need 424. I'm dyslexic, so I sometimes like this up with like numbers. So 424 years. So we see here sort of like a controversy, right? While we need this amount of water to train an algorithm in only 97 days, we need 400 years. A person would use this amount of water in 400 years. And moreover, in the last month, in November 15, I was analyzing the market, so which companies are the most important companies in terms of market capitalization. And for first time in history, NVIDIA was the first one to surpass other companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And that means that the power doesn't rely anymore on the algorithm, on the technology, but on its infrastructure. So who has the power to manufacture chips? Who has the power to supply these chips and to install these chips in data centers? Because once you get access to these chips and to these data centers, you're going to be able to develop these LLMs. So to give a bit of context of the research I'm going to explain today, I published recently this paper, Supply Chains Capitalism of AI at Information, Communication and Society, thanks to this British academic grant and also the support of my department, the Oxford Internet Institute. And I will be happy to say also that it's the most read publication in the journal, but today actually is not there anymore in the ranking because there is a glitch in the journal. But if you see like the number of views, it's the most read paper. So a bit of the state of the art, or the literature review that I base my research on. Something I propose is to rethink the political impact of algorithms. If we analyze the literature on algorithmic harms and resistance, we will see that scholars have been analyzing statistical bias, discrimination, disinformation, these sort of harms and risks that are related with the software of AI. And then what I wanted to propose in my research is that this literature should include now other type of harms related to the infrastructure. So for instance, what are the risks of implementing or building a data center? What are the risks of extracting minerals to manufacture chips? What are the risks of manufacture chips? Then if we move into this body of literature that have largely analyzed infrastructure of technology, we see that there has been a focus on data centers, and there is a lot of scholars that have analyzed the impact of these infrastructures. But then something that I also analyzed, that there is a gap in this literature because these scholars didn't connect data centers with other infrastructures like chip factories or mines or e-waste dams. So what I propose in that research is to first start considering that we need to rethink these political impacts, but also incorporating environmental impacts. And then second, we also need to connect all these infrastructures together. So data centers together with chip factories and mines and e-waste. So I also got inspiration from social scientists, critical social scientists, researchers. And one of the papers that was key for my research was this following the thing papaya. So in that paper, Scholar Cook was analyzing the supply chain of papaya from a UK supermarket to a Jamaican farm. So something that I wondered when I read that paper was that, can we do the same with AI? Can we follow the Think AI? Is it possible to analyze the infrastructure of AI, analyze like all its supply chains and how like materials flow, materials that are used to build to train AI? Is it possible to do that? And then another scholar has been key for my research is Ana Tsing. Ana Tsing is an anthropologist based in the US. She wrote in 2015 this amazing book, The Mushrooms at the End of the World, where she analyzed the supply chains of mushrooms. So I was considering in my research, could we like merge these two bodies of scholars and analyze, follow the Think AI while also analyzing the supply chains instead of mushrooms of AI and chips. So a paper that has been key in order to develop my research is seeing supply chains and the human condition. And in this publication that she published in 2009, Ana Tsing analyzed the supply chains of two companies that at that time were very relevant. These companies are Nike and Walmart. Ana Tsing considers supply chains as commodity chains based on subcontracting, outsourcing, and allied arrangements in which the autonomy of components and enterprises is legally established. So it's basically like a network of different companies that outsource, and they are also considered allies. Another feature that Ana Tsing also add to these supply chains is that they are harder to control because they are harder to control that, you know, when you focus on just one company or just a state. She says that, and she argues that in that piece that, you know, controlling supply chains is very difficult because of this arrangement of allies and outsourcing. And then finally, one of the features that Ana Tsing also proposed was that supply chains create both great wealth, but also create poverty. So after reading that paper, I wonder how we could implement this analysis on supply chains into nowadays AI. Because at that time, in 2009, Ana Tsing was analyzing Walmart and Nike, and what happened if we analyze today's most powerful companies like NVIDIA or Google or Microsoft. So I was wondering if these features could apply or not. So to begin with, I propose a theoretical framework, which is the supply chain of AI. And I define that as the orchestration of commodity chains that extract, ship, and manufacture the natural resources needed to develop AI from an infrastructural perspective. So that means that we need to bear in mind and to consider mines, data centers, e-waste dams, together with the human resources in every aspect of these infrastructural elements. Then I define the supply chain of AI in 4 different phases. The first phase is material extractivism. And this phase considers all the minerals and raw materials that need to be extracted in order to manufacture chips. Thanks to a report that I got access from NVIDIA, I was able to track the geographical places where NVIDIA extracts its minerals from. And for instance, I was able to analyze that NVIDIA gets tin from China, it gets tantalum from Kazakhstan, it gets gold from Colombia, and it gets tungsten from Brazil. So we can see also that there is this sort of like globalization of AI supply chains because it depends on different geographies. And then in this phase, it also we see also environmental impacts. So for instance, in this graph, it was made by one researcher based at University of Edinburgh that I'm collaborating with. He analyzed the amount of elements that are needed to manufacture mineral semiconductor chips nowadays, and we see that the number of elements have been increasing. So nowadays we need more elements in order to manufacture the semiconductors that are needed to train these LLMs. And this is connected to environmental harms, because I suppose that you are familiar with the idea that, every time that we're extracting minerals from the soil, this is creating some environmental risks, like, for instance, the amount of carbon emission that are, used when we are extracting these minerals. And this graph shows, for instance, that gold are one of the minerals that emits more carbon emissions when we are extracting. Tantalum, that is also needed for making AI. Lithium, that is not directly with AI, although a lot of researchers have analyzed this mineral. Lithium is essential for batteries. So when you visit a data center, they have a battery room, because they have to be protected if there are like some blackouts, and these batteries are made of lithium. But I don't consider lithium like a mineral for making AI. So this shows that, like, we need more resources, we need more natural resources, and this is also creating environmental impacts like carbon emissions. But not only that, some researchers published in Nature Sustainability last year the different, the lands that are used to extract these minerals belong, around like 80% of this land belong to indigenous and peasant communities. So this graph, for instance, shows for every mineral that is needed for the energy transition, and also part of these minerals are also used for the digital transition, and also for semiconductors, so for the AI infrastructure. 80% of these minerals are extracted from land that belongs to indigenous people or peasants. Then we move to the second phase, which is chip manufacture. So once the minerals are extracted, they are shipped in order to manufacture the semiconductors. So when the tantalum, tin, gold, and tungsten is extracted, NVIDIA sends it to TSMC, because NVIDIA doesn't manufacture the chips. It's a fabless company. It relies and outsources this service to TSMC, that is based in Taiwan. So every time that you hear these geopolitical conflicts between the US and China, part of this is because TSMC, because thanks to this factory, basically this factory manufactures 80% of the chips used for AI nowadays. So TSMC manufactures the chips, and I don't know if you remember this tantalum mineral extracted in Kazakhstan. So this appears here in the chip. So this is a GPU. I don't know if you're familiar with a GPU. It's like a piece of art. It's very beautiful, and it's made of natural resources like gold, silver, and tantalum. So this part of the chip are named capacitors, and they store energy, electricity. So when the chip needs a shot of electricity, it takes the electricity from these capacitors that are made of tantalum. So this is where, in this exercise of following the Think AI, I follow the tantalum from Kazakhstan to Taiwan to this GPU. Then manufacturing GPUs also creates environmental impacts. For instance, the amount of water that is required to manufacture these semiconductors is increasing year over year. So for instance, this graph was taken from TSMC sustainability report. So something that is very good in terms of transparency is that corporations like NVIDIA, TSMC, or Google, they release their sustainability reports every year. So it's in terms of transparency, it's good because we are able to know information about their carbon emissions and also water usage. So in that report, TSMC was showing that year over year, the amount of water that is required is increasing. So that means that they are manufacturing more chips because we are requiring more chips, but also the amount of water is also increasing. And that was a controversy in 2021 because the Taiwanese government told to their peasants that they need to keep the water for this factory and not to water rice. And that was an investigation that was published by the Washington Post. And it was very interesting, right? Because it sort of like showed these frictions between like local communities next to these AI infrastructures and its environmental impacts. Then we moved to phase 3 in this supply chain of AI data centers and AI operation. So once TSMC manufactures the chips, NVIDIA supplies the chips across the world. It supplies the chips to data centers based in different countries, also universities. And in this phase, I also consider all the environmental impacts related to the data centers, but also with the AI operation. Because something, a gap that I found in the literature is that scholars analyzing the environmental impact of AI focus on the training phase of the algorithm. But this is a gap because we also need to consider all the supply chain. So we need to consider the carbon emission of extracting the tantalum, the carbon emission of building the data center, the carbon emissions of training these algorithms. And then finally, phase 4 is e-waste. So the environmental impacts and the supply chain of AI doesn't finish in a data center because every 3-5 years, the data centers have to get rid of their GPUs. So that's creating a big problem with e-waste. That means that every 4 years, a data center is getting rid of their electronics. And we know that this is a global issue because the global north is sending these electronic waste to landfills based in Kenya and in Ghana, creating a lot of environmental harms, but also health risks to the people, to the local community next to this e-waste. And then a paper that was published this year in Nature analyzed how LLMs could contribute to e-waste challenges. And then these scholars claim that if we don't regulate the amount of GPUs and e-waste that LLMs are going to create, it could multiply the amount of e-waste per 10 times. So that's a lot of electronics that needs to be taken into account if we don't have like any policy intervention into that problem. So that's the theoretical framework of my research. And then I would like to focus now on the empirical results that show this theoretical framework into real case scenario. And as Vicky said, I was trained as a mathematician and computer scientist, but since my postdoc, so 4 years ago, I've been training myself into more social science methods. And now I implement, for instance, ethnographic methodologies like semi-structured interviews and participant observations in order to better understand what are like the environmental challenges of AI infrastructure and its supply chains nowadays. So thanks to that grant and the departmental support that I got, I was able to do 5 months fieldwork in Mexico and Chile. And we're going to start with Mexico. So in Mexico, Mexico in the data center market is becoming one of the main hubs in Latin America. Actually, is a Latin American country with the highest number of data centers. As Statista shows, they already have 170 data centers. And then within Mexico, I was interested in the state of Querétaro because Querétaro is a state a bit north in north up to the capital. So the capital, Ciudad de México, is here, and here is Querétaro. And then Querétaro has already 10 data centers that are operating, but then the government is inviting 18 data centers more to operate in the next decade. That means that in a few years, there will be 28 data centers operating in a region that is at risk of drought. So Querétaro is the state which 100% of its land is at risk of drought. So there is a lack of water. In order to overcome this water scarcity, 17 years ago, the government of Querétaro, that Querétaro is here, went to the community of Maconi in the mountains and asked the community of Makoni if they would be able to give their water, because, you know, in the mountains there is a lot of water resources. So the government told them, like, if they would be happy to give them this water, and then build a 100 kilometers long pipe in order to pump this water from Makoni to the industrial parks where the data centers are based. In exchange, the government also promised to the community to improve their water infrastructure, because the people in Makoni, they don't have access to drinking water in their own houses. And actually last month I was able to witness that issue. They got access of drinking water in their taps in their houses 1 hour per week. And I asked them what happened if that, that hour you are not in the house, and they told me we don't have water. We have to wait next week. So as this case reveals, 17 years later, the government built the pipe, and the water is arriving into the industrial parks, but then the community doesn't have access to water. And in my fieldwork, I met Juan, that is this person that you see here in this TikTok video, because given that the government didn't promise its promises, didn't bring the water to the community, they walked for 5 days from Makoni to Querétaro in order to claim to the government of Querétaro that they don't have access to water. And Juan was explaining to me that, he was not able to water its own plants in order to make nixtamal. Nixtamal is a mix of corn and water that it's original from the Mexican cuisine, and it's linked also to its indigenous tradition. So it was sad to see that, people like Juan is not able to water its plants and to keep having or preparing these traditional and indigenous cuisine dishes. So given my ethnographic work, I was able to travel to Makoni, and this is, for instance, a picture I took in Makoni last October. And this is a lorry, a blue lorry that you see here. It contains water, because this is how the people in Makoni got access to water. Basically, this lorry visits different communities within this mountain and give water to the people. So in my ethnographic work, I was analyzing and witnessing these sort of geographical asymmetries, because while the people in Makoni got access through this to water through these lorries, data centers have access to water through this well. So that's a picture of a well that I took next to a data center. So it's quite likely that the data center is taking water from this well. So then, as a result, I also witnessed sort of like resistance by the community in last year, the community of Makoni saying, it's not draw, it's looting, we want the water for us, we don't want the water for the businesses. But it's not only about water, there is also electricity blackouts that are related with the fact that the government is strengthening and enhancing the electricity grid in the area, because it needs to provide an electricity to data centers. So for instance, this is a picture of the electricity grid that is supplying the industrial parks where the data centers are based. And this is, for instance, a picture of a data center by Microsoft that it's building nearby this two infrastructure. And I got also access to public reports that publish the amount of megawatts that these data centers are using. So for instance, we see here that there are like 3 data centers by Microsoft that are gonna use almost 50 megawatts. And I got also like access to stakeholders by this company, and they told me that this data center is gonna be built in order to provide ChatGPT services to the people of Mexico. So we see here how much megawatts, how much electricity ChatGPT will need to use. And then more interestingly, the data center that uses more electricity is by Origin. It uses 220 megawatts, and that's not related with AI. That's related with online gaming, because actually online gaming is nowadays using more electricity than AI. Then we moved to the case of Chile. So after visiting Mexico, I also analyzed the environmental impacts of this supply chain focusing on data centers in Chile. And I was able to visit the community of Huechuraba in the capital in Santiago de Chile. And in that community, I witnessed also a friction between Amazon and the people of Huechuraba. And in that case, it was not because of the data center itself. It was more because of the infrastructure surrounding this data center. The people of Huechuraba are very connected with this hill because it's connected to its indigenous tradition. So all their holidays they spend that there, and they also have like family like memories in their families, in their with their grandmothers spending time in that hill. So Amazon wanted to implement and construct some pylons in order to bring the electricity to the data center. And then the people of Huechuraba was against that because they don't want any company to touch this hill. They want to keep it as it is. So that creates a lot of frictions in the community. And then I was also able to visit Quilicura, which is also another community in the capital in Santiago de Chile. And in that case, I didn't witness any resistance by the community, but I was able to analyze another interesting fact of data centers. So in Quilicura, Google is operating. And for instance, this is a data center, Google's a data center. And these green towers are storing the water that the data center needs in order to cool down its rooms. So we see that they are storing huge quantity of water. And a strategy that the data centers are using in order to compensate its environmental impacts, it's through carbon offsets or providing like benefits to the community. So in the case of Quilicura, I observed, and that was thanks to a collaboration that I started with scholars based in Santiago de Chile, that we observed that Google is paying a company in order to build a forest, and then say that through this forest, they are compensating their carbon emissions. And then we were able to visit that forest, and that was the state of the forest. So it was abandoned. Yeah. It was quite sad to witness that. So in order to wrap up the talk, I observed how in Mexico and Chile are becoming two relevant data centers hubs within Latin America. Seeing supply chains resonates with my ethnographic research, entanglements between capitalist and non-capitalist elements in these AI supply chains, right? That reminds me to Juan and its nixtamal, these non-capitalist elements, how they intertwine with these capitalist elements of data centers using a lot of water, a lot of natural resources in order to power its servers. There is a lack of environmental protection in both in Chile and Mexico. So Mexico doesn't have any public resource where you are able to access to environmental reports by these data centers. Well, Chile, it does have. So in Chile, there is a public platform where local communities have access to environmental reports by data centers. So that brings more transparency to its impacts. And then some like question that I'm wondering myself in order to follow up on this research is how we foster AI innovation while safeguarding environmental and human rights. So how we can, keep innovating with AI while we also take into account environmental struggles and human rights. So something that I'm exploring is that maybe if we bring public participation with democratic values, so if we invite the local communities to decide whether they want this infrastructure with information about the environmental impacts, benefits, and the good aspects of these infrastructures, but also like the environmental risk of this industry with democratic values, that might be a possibility of improving the conditions of local communities nearby these data centers. So I say that there is an opportunity for AI environmental governance because actually the legal frameworks that I've been analyzing are a bit weak regarding the environmental harms of artificial intelligence. For instance, UNESCO published in 2021 this AI guideline saying that AI systems should reduce the environmental impact of its systems, including but not limited to its carbon footprint. And of course, because it's not only about carbon, it's also about water and land and e-waste generation. The EU AI Act, for instance, says that AI should be implemented in an environmentally friendly manner, but it doesn't show what does that mean. What does that mean to be environmentally friendly? You know, like which kind of metrics do we have to consider in order to analyze whether an AI system is environmentally friendly or not? And then last but not least, USA just published this Artificial Intelligence Environmental Impacts Act to carry out a study on the environmental impacts of artificial intelligence. So basically, there is a group of experts in the US that are asking and analyzing, are asking information to stakeholders, to private actors like NVIDIA, in order to understand how we can study and investigate and mitigate the environmental harms that are emerging through artificial intelligence. So regarding these three legal frameworks that I've been analyzing, I say that there is an opportunity to build better policies in this context of AI environmental governance. So next steps that I'm going to take in my research is that I want to develop this fine-grained understanding of environmental impacts across supply chains, because as I say, there is only like quantitative information about the carbon emissions of a specific algorithm or data center. So I want to analyze with quantitative data the environmental impacts across its supply chains. And to do that, I will use STS frameworks and also computational social science methods, like for instance, scrapping corporate sustainability reports and extract information there. And I think that there is a student that might be working on that next term. To develop a material ontology of AI, and with this I'm collaborating with a PhD based here at the Oxford Internet Institute in order to analyze which are the raw materials that are essential for building GPUs. Then keep investigating the four phases with ethnographic methods, not only data centers, also like mines that are related with AI infrastructure, chips factories, and finally engage with relevant stakeholders in the private sector, but also in governmental bodies in the UK and in the European Union, because we need to raise awareness about the environmental impacts of AI, because it's going to be growing, because LLMs are growing, and we need to also strengthen these policy guidelines. So finally, the supply chain or capitalism of AI offers a theoretical framework to take into account this production line of technology. And my ethnographic approach in Mexico and Chile shows that there are like some controversies within these supply chains that we need to further investigate. And it opened a debate around AI, the environment, and democratic values in order to build a world of many words where everybody can fit here. So thank you very much, and looking forward for your questions.
You're right, picking your own questions. If you start, and I'll get the chat up as well.
We got one.
Brilliant.
I think I'm gonna start with like the room, and then I can also add the one online.
I had one small question. I was just curious. Why locate a data center in an area that's at risk of droughts? Why couldn't they make a different choice? What are the tensions there? And then I really had a second comment / question. I really liked in the end where you were talking about how could we resolve it and bring more voices to think of public participation. And I was wondering whether literature on like citizen assemblies, this is something you're probably already looking at. And I was particularly struck, I've recently been at the talk where was a very sort of high person from Google DeepMind scholar, a conversation with them. And one of the points he raised is that is also involved in some UNESCO conversations, that Oh, he was talking about the divide in comments between Global South and Global North, and was saying that in the Global South, people, they're all really keen and they're worried to be left behind by the digital divide. Everybody just wants it. And to me, that also, listening also to your talk, it suggests that we need more diversity of representation across the board, and it would be interesting how we could address it.
Thank you, Katya. I'm gonna pick up more questions. So,
Actually, I have two questions. One was regarding accessibility. So like in the early 2010s, we saw that demand or, these new data centers came up where there was demand for cloud services and to, reduce the latency. Is the same theme being followed right now? And how does that affect, let's say, building LLMs for low resource languages? Are the data centers concentrated in one location? Another question I had was accountability. Does the accountability lie with these for-profit companies or the countries where this data, centers are being harvested and, they've been put up? Yeah. And does that affect the offset, their net zero goals that these countries individually have as well?
thank you.
First of all, thank you, Anna. That was also just visually, I think you made such a powerful case. So congratulations on that. I had two questions. One was, you spoke quite a number of times about the community, right? And I was curious if there are fractures within the community. Are there people for and against this? Because I think it's also very important to look at this in terms of if you make this more democratic, what does that really mean? Who's it going to favor and so on? And the second question, I think there's, I don't know if there's a question or a comment, but I'm just thinking about the way regulation works and breaks in these cases, right? And I'm wondering if the reason these companies went to Chile or Mexico or particular provinces there in the first place was that it didn't have regulation, and given that that's going to stay uneven, to what extent does regulation in one area really solve the problem?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'm gonna answer these questions and then I'm gonna grab more questions after I answer them. Thank you very much for your questions are very interesting and relevant for my next steps. So regarding growth, that's a very interesting question. And actually, like data centers we need data centers elsewhere. And they go to the land that is more feasible for them to develop their industry. So I am like actually thinking that data centers are like mushrooms, because once one data center pop up, more data centers pop up nearby that data center, because that means that the conditions are good for this industry. So this is what happened in Querétaro. Despite being at risk of drought, it has all the conditions so that they can pop up. And it's true that they don't have a lot of water, but has this infrastructure with the pipe that's going to provide them water. It has also like a benefit of the government. So the government is inviting more data centers to come. So that's also very important because that means that the political side is welcoming this industry. So it's not only about the environmental conditions, it's more about, what are the political conditions, the social conditions. In Mexico, I didn't saw like resistance, specific resistance against data center. People didn't know about this industry. So that's also good for the industry. And then regarding citizen assembly, yes, this is something, but that's also like very far in my research because first, like I want to understand like, the supply chain. And then once we understand the supply chain, then it's time to understand like what does this public engagement mean, and what does that mean like to organize this democratic participation workshops with democratic values. But yeah, thank you, Katya. Regarding LLMs and low resources, thank you for that question, because I think that's very important. For me, it's a fascinating area of research. Microsoft just released 2-3 weeks ago an LLM that uses low computational power, and it's an LLM. So I think that that's gonna be, and it's called frugal computational science. So how we can build LLMs with less resources. And I think that's a fascinating research area. And I think that the big tech companies, regarding all this criticism that is being raised, they're going to invest more resources and research into this frugality AI. but thank you. And then you had another question about the carbon net zero. And can you repeat that question again?
It was more about accountability, like, which does it lie with the company, which is based in some other country, let's say a Western country, versus where, let's say Mexico or Latin America, where it's being harvested from,
So something I witnessed in my research is that, for instance, in Chile, the industry is very accountable because you have a public platform where you can download the impacts. So the environmental reports. So you go to the, you can look for the area, so Huechuraba, and then you can see all the environmental reports of all the industry that's going to develop its activities there. So that's very good because something like that, we don't have that in Spain, for instance, right? But then on the other hand, nobody is accounting for this report. So there is no an independent body that is analyzing this report and, checking that all the information there is reliable. So I think I'm also advocating for this kind of activities. We need more independent bodies to analyze and account these environmental reports, because that's the only information we have from this company. So when we want to analyze environmental impact, the only public resources that we have is corporate sustainability reports. It's true that now the European Union has a new law, it's the Energy Efficiency Directive, EED, that it's gonna make data centers above 50 megawatts to report its environmental metrics. This was enforced last September, and the European Union promised to have a public database of data centers' environmental impacts, but the database is not still there. But we are pushing for that to happen. So there is regulation coming that's going to make this industry more accountable. Thank you, Janaki, for the question. So regarding the community, it's true that there are like some people in the community that might be against, but there are also people that are in favor of that. And this is something that I witnessed in the UK with Boshi Bu, who is now the field candidate at the Oxford Internet Institute. And they did an amazing master dissertation analyzing the frictions in the cloud in the UK, analyzing a data center that's going to be implemented in East London. And we analyzed that within that community, with people pro data center, they say like, yes, let's bring more data centers in our community because they are going to bring innovation and jobs. But there is also like people against. And when we are analyzing these frictions and controversies, we also have to analyze these frictions within the same community, because of course people have different opinions. And then regarding regulation, you ask about like how regulation works in the area, right? So it really depends on the geographical area. Like for instance, in Mexico, there is no regulation on environmental impacts. And then in Chile, there is regulation because, for instance, they have to make publicly available these environmental reports. So there is a sort of regulation, but it also depends on the politicians. So if the politicians are welcoming the data centers, they're going to develop their industry there because they know that they have that in favor. So yeah, thank you. I'm going to answer like some questions online and then move offline. So one of the questions we got online was, how can we attribute the energy consumption or environmental degradation of a mine to AI specifically, and not say to electric vehicles? That's a very important question because it's very hard to understand whether a data center is using AI or not, because most data centers, they don't use AI. Most data centers, they just store our notes, our images, our WhatsApp conversations. So I've been giving this talk in different, universities, and I got this question. And I think one way of doing that is through interviews, through ethnographic research. Going there and asking, engaging with the stakeholders, engaging with the private actors, and have like an interview and ask them about the services that they are offering in their data center. That's a way of doing that. Regarding the minerals in AI, a way of analyzing that is through GPUs, because GPUs are used for instance, LLMs. So a way of narrowing it down is by focusing on generative AI, because generative AI is driving up the environmental impact of this technology. I code AI since 2014, and I didn't use a data center, and nobody was talking about the environmental impacts of AI, because to train a machine learning model, you could train it in your own laptop, and the amount of energy that it uses is very low. But generative AI is driving up the environmental impact. So I think a way of analyzing the minerals is focusing on generative AI and focusing on the elements that are based in the GPU. So which minerals NVIDIA is using or TSMC is using to manufacture the GPU, I would say. And then another question I had is, it would be very important to bring this research to the attention of policymakers, as you mentioned. I would be interested to know, how do you plan to go about it? What would be the relevant channels to push you? So thank you for that question, because I'm actually developing a grant where I want to bring policymakers into that topic. And I think I'm very lucky to be here based in Oxford, because there is the Oxford Policy Network that is a network that puts you in touch with policymakers in different contexts. In the UK, put you in contact with MPs at the House of Lords and the Parliament. And I also have contacts in the European Parliament through NGOs and digital rights organizations. So that's a way to, I think, engage with policy makers. And then I think we have more questions.
Let's try 3 more questions,
Okay.
maybe, and then we'll see where we get to from there.
So maybe you, and you.
Thank you so much for your talk. And Mr. Janicki's question really got me thinking. And I'm wondering, you mentioned using public participation and democracy to kind of counter the exploitation and extractivism that's happening. I'm wondering how you envision using those methods to counter the discursive practices of these companies that are coming into these, communities and saying, we're offering jobs, we're offering such and such, and really creating this desirable attribute for their presence. And correlated to that, in looking at labor, in your observations in your field work, and what kinds of workers did you encounter working in these data centers? Were they precarious workers? What was the nature of their employment? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this regards.
Yeah.
Regarding the lack of environmental protection you mentioned at the end, and more specifically in the case of Chile, I'm from Chile, and it's interesting because currently the public discussion, it's quite the opposite, is that there is too much regulation. That's why these kind of companies are not investing in the country. And in fact, there's been a couple of, I think that Tesla wanted to put something in the north for the lithium, and there were some of the big techs that are being wanting to do something, and they decided to go elsewhere. So currently, the discussion is quite the opposite. So in what ways you see that the environmental protection is kind of is not actually high, it's actually letting these companies to develop their projects locally, because I think at least the public perception is different.
Thank you. And then one on the back.
I think my question could be lumped in with question 1, actually. I just wanted to hear more about what you could say about what kind of participatory methods are you looking into.
Okay. And then the last question there.
So mine's somewhat similar to Kat's, actually, but on kind of the questions around labor, I assume there's some pretty highly skilled jobs that are required to run a data center. And so to what extent are they trying to train people that are there versus bring people in? And does kind of that lead to any tension in the community? And to what extent does that help the development of the community economically?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So regarding jobs, I also got this question a lot. And I'm not a labor expert, but I have some preliminary ideas regarding my ethnographic research. So regarding focusing on data centers, because there are different phases in this AI supply chain, but focusing on data centers, something interesting about this industry is that there is a shortage of people that can work in a data center, because it's a very specialized work. So you have to be a specialized engineer to work in this industry. And there are other industries, like for instance, the car industry, aerospace industry, where you can also develop your job. So there is a lot of competition between different industries. And actually, when I go to data centers conventions, the industry, they complain that there is not a lot of human resources, human labor that can work in their industry. But then on the other hand, I visit 4 data centers so far. And if you enter one data center, it's merely empty. They don't need a lot of employees. They can also work remotely because they just need to check that the system is working. They don't need to be there in place. However, when they build the data center, then there is a lot of jobs that come to the community because, they have to mobilize a lot of different services like, all these infrastructure, all these systems, water system, electricity system, to build the building. So it's true that at the beginning, they need a lot of, they create a lot of employment, but then once the data center is built, then they don't need that much. And that's related with one of the questions because they always promise jobs to the community, but that not always happen. Because as I say, they require very specialized jobs and skills. So that, sometimes the local community don't have these skills. But for instance, in Mexico, they are collaborating with universities in order to train their students, and that then they can go and work in a data center. And their salary is quite good. So it's not low skill job. Regarding community and democratic values, so I'm at the very early stage of this analysis. I've been in touch with digital rights organizations in order to create these public participatory activities with them because they have more experience than me. But I think something very, very relevant is to bring all together in the same room. So to bring the industry together with the community and bring all them on a table and then discuss and debate, because that's the only way to do it, I think, in order to respect these human rights, fundamental rights. And then finally, regarding the environmental protection of Chile, I struggle to answer that question because it's very difficult to understand what are the frictions that this activity is creating regarding legal frameworks and regarding environmental legal frameworks, because it's true that we have this transparency and accountability in Chile that they have to publish their environmental reports, but sometimes they do dodgy activities, like for instance publishing 2 different environmental reports when they they belong to the same project. So, there are these tensions regarding legal frameworks. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm happy to collaborate with legal experts and legal scholars in order to better understand these consequences. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you very much for your attendance. Hopefully